In this episode of Titans, heavyweight powerhouse George Foreman.
He was unbeatable. He just mowed down opponent after opponent after opponent.
You got to say he's one of the best.
But before he's heavyweight champion, he's a thug.
I was fighting on the street. I was the person that people had to defend themselves against because I was the delinquent of all delinquents.
From a life of poverty to world-class boxer, the multimillionaire businessman.
It was really quite amazing to see how the crowd was responding to George.
The key to Foreman's fortune is magnetic personality and power to sell.
We sold over 100 million of those George Foreman grills.
This is in the Marketing Hall of Fame. They pick George Foreman, they put his autograph on it, and boom, it sells.
George Foreman is one of the greatest fighters of all time.
He drops his hand and he come up, bam! He was very smart in the ring. He knew how to set people up and try to load those bombs on them.
Foreman's knockout ratio is going to place him among the most dangerous punchers who ever put on gloves.
It's 1974, and heavyweight champion George Foreman is on the precipice of what will become one of the most famous fights in boxing history. The notorious Rumble in the Jungle. Both Foreman and Muhammad Ali are offered the biggest purse yet, to slug it out in Kinshasa, Zaire.
Both Muhammad Ali and myself have been guaranteed $5 million.
People began to fear for Ali's life in the Rumble in the Jungle, predicated on his destruction of Frazier. There was no way in many people's thinking that Ali could beat him.
But an undaunted Ali devises a fighting strategy that begins long before the actual match. He taunts George publicly, encouraging the people of Zaire to chant Ali Boumaye, which means Ali, kill him.
What Muhammad Ali was saying and doing had no effect on me. I was that confident that I'd knock him out.
But Foreman is in for a big surprise that will change his life.
Ali had done this magnificent job of really co-opting the local populace and turning George into not just the invader, but it was like George was the white man in this fight.
But from the beginning, Foreman's road to fame and fortune is fraught with hardship. One of 7 children, George is born January 10th, 1949, to Nancy and J.D. Foreman. Grinding poverty plagues his struggling family for years.
Growing up in Houston, Texas was pretty rough because mom and dad had to go to work. And so you leave the kids to themselves. And a lot of us got in trouble.
Trouble is easy to find. George's turf is Houston's 5th Ward, also known as the Bloody Fifth. He learns at an early age to rely on his fists.
I was a bad boy in Houston, Texas. I was the person that people had to defend themselves against because I was the delinquent of all delinquents, fighting on the street.
He was part of a strong-arm gang. I mean, his job would usually be to knock somebody down and they'd steal their wallet or steal their purse.
By age 15, George drops out of school for a life of crime.
I didn't see any specific reason for me to go to school because all of my heroes were people who didn't have any education at all. They got their education from the jailhouses.
But a life of crime quickly loses its luster. He begins a downward spiral that doesn't end until he hits rock bottom.
I was out robbing and mugging people one night and trying to run from the police. I hid underneath the house. I said to myself then, if ever I get from this house and the police don't get me, I'm going to change my life.
Send a postcard to Job Corps, Washington, D.C.
Days later, that opportunity comes knocking.
These are some of the first Job Corps volunteers.
George sees a TV commercial with 2 pro football stars promoting President Lyndon Johnson's Job Corps.
Jimmy Brown and Johnny Unitas said, if you're looking for a second chance, you want an education, join the Job Corps.
After spending 6 months with the Job Corps in Grants Pass, Oregon, George is transferred to California. There he meets Doc Brodus, a trainer who recognizes George's raw potential as a fighter. Their relationship alters the course of Foreman's life forever.
Doc at the time was very well respected within USA boxing circles. He had been a successful amateur coach, and Doc actually ended up putting the first pair of gloves on George.
After repeated dorm room brawls, Brodus helps George avoid expulsion from the Job Corps by training him to channel his rage from the streets to the boxing ring.
I was getting into a lot of trouble, and it was frustrating for a lot of people because as soon as I go up, I'd slide into trouble. But Doc never gave up on me.
He saw that he was going to be a quick study. He was going to be a quick learner.
Doc's gamble pays off. George's raw power decimates his opponents, and he quickly racks up an impressive number of amateur victories.
He was just knocking people for dead, which can be a mixed blessing because when you're getting your opponents out of there very quickly and doing it on strength alone, there's some things you're not learning along the way.
Despite George's lack of experience and technical knowledge, he is chosen for the 1968 Olympic boxing team.
I had no idea what I was doing. I was fulfilling Doc Brodus' dream that he had of me. And after I made the United States Olympic team, I stopped and thought, I can do this. Maybe. Then it became my dream.
Foreman punches his way to a gold medal by defeating Russian champ Ioannis Chipulis.
They constantly told me to use my left jab, and after 2 rounds, I won that boxing match. I was shocked and surprised. When they raised my hand, it was the first time I'd ever had a dream to come true. I was an Olympic gold medalist.
The elated young fighter enthusiastically waves a small American flag.
I wanted this 500 million people to know where I was from, the United States of America. I was just a 19-year-old happy boy.
In 1969, George decides to turn pro. His amateur career is over.
He debuts in 1969 at Madison Square Garden against Don Waldheim. Knocks him out. And in the interview afterwards said, Lord, I'm tough. I can beat anyone.
And he does. Within 2 years, George is ranked the #1 contender by the World Boxing Association and the World Boxing Council.
One knockout after another. No one stood in my way of becoming champ of the world.
And George, with that style of his, which was less a style than it looked like somebody just hewing down trees. Boom, boom, boom.
For the next 36 fights, 33 decided by knockout, George is unbeatable. In 1973, George finally gets his shot at the title. Dubbed the Sunshine Showdown in Kingston, Jamaica, his opponent is Smokin' Joe Frazier.
I'm the champion of the world. That's what I stand for. I'm the champion of the world. So come on, let's take this guy out. Get him out of here, you know what I'm saying?
Joe Frazier decided to fight me as a warm-up to Muhammad Ali.
I said, well, why, Yank, you know, let's go in and get the job done.
When Titans returns,
Foreman had never faced a dangerous puncher like Joe Frazier.
When I got in the ring with Joe Frazier, he was intimidating. I was afraid. I'll admit I was scared a little bit.
Can George Foreman take the heat from Smokin' Joe? And later, see how the George Foreman grill goes from a few kitchens in the U.S. to the world stage.
I told him one time, we're going to sell 1 million of those grills. And everybody was like, yeah, George. Nobody believed me.
It knocked the fat out, burgers?
It knocks the fat out.
George had a resume by the time of the Frazier fight, and it was very impressive. He was undefeated, 37 wins, 34 by knockout. He was much bigger than Frazier, and I don't think Frazier, who had beaten Ali the previous year, took him seriously, or as seriously as he should have.
1973, knockout artist George Foreman is on the cusp of a life-changing event, the Sunshine Showdown in Kingston, Jamaica. His undefeated record earns him the rank of #1 contender. His opponent, world heavyweight champ Smokin' Joe Frazier, is unfazed.
I was the champion. It didn't matter how big the guy was. The bigger it come, the harder it fall.
I was so afraid of Joe Frazier. I'd look him in the eyes and was afraid to that he would drop his eyes and see my knees shaking.
The odds are heavily in favor of Frazier, but Foreman, although terrified, is no long shot.
When the bell rung, he came out to me with this disgust, and I knocked him down 6 times, but he got up 6 times.
I've been moving, jabbing, doing different things, and the minute I got smacked, uh-oh, time to go to work. It's time to go to work.
George knocks Joe Frazier down those 6 times in 2 rounds. ending the fight. It is an incredible coup, one of the greatest boxing upsets of all time. George Foreman is now the heavyweight champion of the world.
He devastated this undefeated champion, Joe Frazier, who had beaten Muhammad Ali. I mean, it was no contest.
It was a dream come true. Then I thought I could beat anyone. No one could stand up to me.
He had the championship. He was a bigger, stronger, better guy, so. And I accept that.
It's a crushing defeat for Frazier. One that skyrockets George Foreman to the pinnacle of boxing fame and fortune.
Instantly, I am wealthy. Lots of money started to pour in. I'd heard these rumors about you get paid for boxing matches, but until you're heavyweight champ of the world, you don't understand it.
As the greatest boxer in the world, George now commands upwards of $1 million per fight. To deal with the public, Foreman adopts the attitude of his friend and former heavyweight champion, Sonny Liston.
The limelight was new to him, and Sonny Liston had been heavyweight champion of the world. It was not necessarily a great example, but it was his example.
We travel as stablemates. I learned from him to stare at people. I learned from him how to greet and meet people.
The Sonny Liston scowl soon becomes George's trademark, and now he's one of the most feared heavyweight champions ever.
People just didn't want to box me. It was hard then to get a contender to fight me. They didn't want George Foreman.
There is one boxer, however, who is not afraid to fight him. Former heavyweight champion, Muhammad Ali.
Come get me, son. I'm dancing.
Ali isn't the only one brimming with confidence. George believes he'll knock Ali out the same way he did Frazier and make more money than ever before. The sum is the greatest amount ever paid to individual fighters at the time.
This, of course, would be the highest, biggest purse in the history of boxing. Both men making $5 million at that time. No one had ever done that before. And I defend my title against probably the easiest opponent I'd ever had in my life, the old Muhammad Ali.
Inspired by the promise of even greater fame and fortune, on October 30th, 1974, Foreman and Ali clashed at the infamous Rumble in the Jungle.
The one thing that Ali thought was that George, who'd been knocking out people in 1, 2, and 3 rounds, did not have the stamina should the fight go into the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round. And that was part of his plan.
But Foreman has a plan of his own, to cut Ali off in the ring, forcing him to hit the ropes.
I beat, knowing that I was going to knock him out because I staggered him a couple times. But the bell would ring, he'd be just fine.
Round after round, Ali continues leaning into the ropes as George pounds away at him. Ali's plan, it seems, is working. Foreman is wearing himself down. Experts will later brand this technique the rope-a-dope.
Foreman's boom, boom, boom started looking as if it was in slow-mo. And you got a hint of what was happening. That Ali was tiring him out.
In the 8th round, Ali knocks Foreman out. After one short year, Foreman's reign as champ is over.
I was totally devastated. For months after a boxing match, I'd wake up, have dreams, and wake up trying to beat the count, sweating.
After the Rumble in the Jungle, Foreman takes a 1-year hiatus from boxing. But he can't stay out of the ring for long.
I had to show the world, look, that wasn't the real George Foreman. Something had to have gone wrong in Africa.
Eager to rebuild his battered confidence and recover his reputation, George takes on Ron Lyle, Dino Dennis, and Pedro Augusto.
One boxing match after another, I'm fighting so often and fighting such good fighters that I'm once again the #1 contender in the world.
In 1977, promoters pair George with heavyweight Jimmy Young. On St. Patrick's Day, they go toe-to-toe in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Jimmy Young is one of the slickest fighters ever. And he just moves, and he moves, and he moves ever so imperceptibly.
I go to knock him out. He knocks me down. But he's so scared and devastated, he runs from me when I get up. But at 12 rounds, I thought I'd won the boxing match. And they gave the decision to Jimmy Young.
It is George's second loss in 3 years. Shattered, he heads back to his dressing room where he is overcome with exhaustion and becomes delirious.
I said, look, I don't care about this boxing match. What does it mean to me? And the words started to multiply. You're going to die. You're going to die. I got mad. I said, I don't care if this is death. I still believe there's a God. When I said that, it was like a gigantic hand reached in and just snatched me out of this place. I started screaming, I'm born again! Hallelujah, I'm clean!
An ambulance whisks Foreman away to the hospital. The official diagnosis is heat prostration. The unofficial one, a crisis of faith. The only remedy, as Foreman sees it, is to quit boxing for good.
When George left the ring, announced his retirement, he was going to become a fighter for God. There was some cynical response to it. But the point here, though, was he had done it in the middle of a career, not after it was over.
Eager to leave his identity as an athlete behind, Foreman starts a new career, preaching on Texas street corners.
One night, I just screamed, yes, I'm George Foreman. I fought Muhammad Ali. I fought Joe Frazier. Yeah, I used to have this, I had that, but now I have God.
Oh, Jesus. As long as you actually to move on this unspoken prayer request, God.
In 1978, Foreman moves his preaching off the streets and into the church. He becomes an ordained minister at the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ in Houston. As a preacher, George not only finds God, but also his soulmate, Mary Martelli.
I thought he was a really good man and really quiet, and he goes to church and didn't smoke and drink. And I was like, wow, you don't find men that don't do that.
After 4 failed marriages and a personal life that had been in shambles, George finally finds peace with Martelli. They wed in 1985 and raise a family of 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls. Children quickly become a focal point of George's life. Not just his family, but all kids, especially underprivileged ones, as he had once been. With his life savings, he creates the George Foreman Youth and Community Center in Houston.
I had to give something back. I had to show those kids, you got to be a role model to them, that everybody's not stealing hubcaps. Everybody's not out there trying to hurt people. Someone cares about you.
The center flourishes, but eventually George's savings run out. His accountant gives him the sobering news. He will go bankrupt if he keeps using his own money to support the center.
At least 8 years had gone by. I hadn't earned any money. Then when I woke up one day, I realized I was broke.
With a family and the youth center to support, George sees only one option.
I had to get out there and earn my way, and boxing is what I knew. My trunks didn't fit me. I was 315 pounds. I was so out of shape.
Next on Titans, after 10 years in retirement at the unlikely age of 38, can George Foreman make a comeback?
I'm going to be heavyweight champ of the world again. I'm going to get my money from my youth center.
Now come the catcalls. Now come the jokes. Now come the disbelievers.
In 1987, 38-year-old former heavyweight boxing champion George Foreman makes an unexpected return to the ring. He isn't only doing it for himself, he is doing it for his youth center.
People laughed at me and said all kind of bad things. I got letters from all over the world saying, George, please don't go back.
I really didn't want him going back in boxing. But then he trained so hard. He's all in it, so I was not worried as much.
George puts himself through grueling workouts, pulling jeeps with a harness, chopping wood, and running for miles.
Well, now I've got to not only be a good boxer, I've got to be better than I had been in the first career, so I'd have to train harder. Where before I'd run 3 miles, I'd have to start running 10 miles.
But it isn't just the young fighters whom Foreman has to prepare for. He also has to tackle the press, many of whom doubt the legitimacy of a former boxer now nearing 40, returning to the ring.
Now come the catcalls. Now come the jokes. Now come the disbelievers. How can you disbelieve a man who wants to be a preacher? But you certainly disbelieve a man who had been a fighter, became a preacher, and now wants to be a fighter again.
But what the naysayers don't know was that this was a different George Foreman. During his time away from boxing, a smile has replaced the scowl.
George Foreman became, dare I say, almost a lovable teddy bear. This menacing, glowering, staring, glaring fighter. And the people started warming to him.
You gonna try and hit me?
Put your hand off.
You gonna try and hit me?
Try. Put your hand on me again.
Try and hit that.
Do it again.
Do it again.
Do it again.
How many punches can I throw?
They said, how can you be champ of the world and you're not in shape? I said, look, there was a time I'd eat a dozen cheeseburgers. I said, not anymore. I only eat 11.
His new demeanor quickly wins over the press. But a tougher challenge is to convince promoters that he can still fill an arena.
And I put on a show like gangbusters. Yes, I'm George Foreman. I'm 40, but I'm not a death sentence.
Yes, sir. Big left hook.
For 3 years, Foreman takes on all comers and disposes of them like a man half his age.
George coming back the second time was a better fighter than the first time. He was more economical and efficient in his punching. He was more compact. He had a greater defense. And something he didn't have his first time around, stamina.
George's training pays off. In 1991, he's estimated to make at least $12 million to step in the ring with Evander Holyfield, the reigning heavyweight champion of the world.
Evander Holyfield, a fine fighter, but he was only a fine fighter reacting to what I do. If I'd miss him, he'd hit me. And if I'd come after him, he'd hit me again.
On April 19th, 1991, in a fight called Battle for the Ages, 42-year-old Foreman goes the distance with Holyfield for 12 rounds.
George, it was just, he had lumps all over his face. His eyes were reduced to slits. But yet, there he was, still battling back.
The decision was going to go to Holyfield. In a clinch, you could hear George audibly say, "Thank you for the chance." He'd never heard anything like that before. This was a gracious gesture, but that was the new George.
For the winner by unanimous decision, Evander.
Although George loses the fight, he wins admirers across the country. Among them, some big-name companies that are interested in George's power to sell.
He was the guy saying, if you're over 40, you can still do it. Everybody wanted him to pitch their companies, and here he was trying to make millions in the boxing world, and he was making millions on Madison Avenue, promoting companies like Doritos, Nike, McDonald's, and the list goes on.
People had looked at my life and decided, you know what, let's let George Foreman endorse our product. And I like that because it wasn't George Foreman the boxer, it was George Foreman the life he lived, working with children.
Out of his altruistic desire to fund his youth center, George's new career as a pitchman is born. Despite his success on Madison Avenue, Foreman still has the fire to fight. In 1994, against all odds, he gets another shot at the title. His opponent, heavyweight champion Michael Moorer, a 26-year-old southpaw, 20 years George's junior. Foreman is paid $1.5 million to take him on.
They want a big payday, and they need an old guy, someone who can't beat them. They underestimate me. All the way back when I first turned professional, George can't do it.
Moorer is the heavy favorite. But when George steps into the ring, the arena erupts.
And the crowd is up on its feet.
George was like the big teddy bear. And he had so many people in the crowd rooting for him. And I'm like, wow, you know. But it didn't bother me. Once the bell rang, that was all out the door.
For 10 rounds, Moorer and Foreman slug it out, with Moorer leading on all scorecards.
I was hitting him in the body, I was hitting him in the chest, I was hitting him in the face. His eye was a little swollen. I was hitting him pretty good.
Finally, in the 10th round, George hit him with a powerful right hand. And Moorer stopped and swayed a little.
And I was able to land 2 right hands on Michael Moorer, and I knocked him down and out.
It was a straight 1-2 punch, and it put 32 stitches up under my lip from that punch.
It's a stunning triumph for Foreman. At the ripe old age of 45, 20 years after winning the title the first time, George makes history as the oldest boxer ever to win the heavyweight championship of the world.
It was an outpouring of really something you rarely hear at a boxing match. But they had seen something that was almost a quasi-miracle.
George's miraculous victory against Moorer only increases his public appeal as a salesman. 1995 is a pivotal year. Sultan Incorporated, a company that specializes in small household appliances, manufactures a grill that is selling poorly.
The product had little interest, but there was a gentleman who was an old friend, and he said, you know, I have a customer for it.
George Foreman is the customer he has in mind.
A friend of mine approached me and said, George, you're making all these other companies wealthy. Why don't you get your own product? Try this. This little thing, I looked at it and said, I'm not interested in toys.
6 months later, George still hasn't tried the grill, but his wife Mary has, and she gives it her seal of approval.
I told him, I tried that grill. I really love that grill. And it was easy for me because having a bunch of kids, you just put the stuff on there. Especially children love grilled cheese sandwiches and stuff like that.
That evening, my wife fixed a burger on it. The grease, everything went away, and the meat was still delicious. So I called my partners back and said, I'm going to do that deal.
Those 6 words launch one of the most successful cooking products in history, the George Foreman Lean, Mean, Fat-Reducing Grilling Machine. Sultan proposes splitting the profits approximately 50-50. After all, they have no idea what sales will be.
The only way we will do it is if it is a partnership. We will not agree to any form of a royalty agreement because I think this will require a fair amount of investment to see how it actually would go.
They agree to a joint venture in which George receives no money up front, but as a courtesy, Sultan gives him 16 grills.
That's all I expected out of the George Foreman grill. The stores weren't really happy to have them, but a few people here and there would use them and exchange stories and recipes, and they'd meet me in the airport and say, George, we love you. From that point on, we were in business.
At the unbelievable age of 45, George Foreman makes history by knocking out former heavyweight champ Michael Moorer and winning the title for a second time. 1 year later, he's about to make history again, but this time in business.
The story was George Foreman, one of the most famous men in the world now. And the story would go on as he branded products to be George Foreman Inc., not just George Foreman heavyweight champ.
Gone are the days of endorsing products for other companies. Now Foreman has his own product, a small kitchen appliance officially named the George Foreman Lean, Mean, Fat-Reducing Grilling Machine.
I'm not only the heavyweight champ of the world, but I'm a businessman. So then I got to change everything. Think I didn't get any sleep back then. Now the sleeping days were completely over.
You know what? The most important thing about grilling, everything is safe. Everything is healthy on the grill.
The heavyweight champ makes appearances on television and at trade shows, meeting the public everywhere.
He enjoyed young people running up to him and saying, hey, that's George, the grill man, without having the faintest idea that he's one of the most famous fighters that have ever lived.
But the grill still isn't selling well.
Welcome to the George Foreman Grilling Show.
To boost publicity, Sultan produces a 30-minute infomercial. In it, George demonstrates how to use the grill.
Knock the fat out, burgers.
It knocks the fat out.
And it flopped. It was pretty much one of the least selling products on the shelf. Most retailers were calling me and saying, get this out of here.
But Dryman is certain the grill will sell. Then a friend calls who says his wife has seen the infomercial. She loves the grill and loves George, but doesn't understand why they've included boxing footage. After all, it has nothing to do with cooking.
She was talking about that the first 30 seconds out of a 30-minute infomercial was George winning a world championship fight at the age of 45.
Sultan re-edits the infomercial. The boxing footage is left on the cutting room floor, replaced with intimate scenes of George and his family at his Texas home.
You don't call them by name, you just cook, and they come.
It turns out to be the missing ingredient.
The George Foreman name and the grill were a knockout combination because they could see him on TV taking a bite into the burger and they say, I know that guy, I trust that guy. I think I'll give it a try.
It's been an honor.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Sales go through the roof. On the night of his last boxing match against Shannon Briggs in 1997, George receives an unexpected bonus.
My attorney had brought a check for the grill, and it was $1 million. That was one of the happy days of my business life. I lost my last professional boxing match. I'd received a check for $1 million for the grill. Today, I'm going to introduce you to my new George Foreman family-size grilling machine.
After Foreman loses his final match, he decides to leave boxing behind, this time for good, and devote his energy to selling the grill full-time.
I just cannot afford boxing anymore. I realized that there was a time that boxing helped me afford the things I wanted, but it was sort of getting in the way of my business life then.
His decision pays off. George sells 1 million grills on QVC alone, which is worth $100 million in sales.
Hello again, QVC. This is George Foreman. Here to remind
his first check may have been as low as $10,000, then went to 50, then 100,000, then $500,000, then $1 million. And I think a couple of years, 2-3 years into it, these checks were almost $5 million a month.
Sultan and George make history by selling more than 100 million grills.
The grill story is going to go down as one of the best stories of all time in terms of the marketing world. I mean, this is in the Marketing Hall of Fame. You have a grill, it's an electric grill, it's a good idea.
When you buy this grill, you'll see my personal signature. That means that George Foreman guarantees that you'll enjoy this grill.
They pick George Foreman, they put his autograph on it, and boom, it sells.
By 1999, the grill is so successful that Sultan approaches George about purchasing his half of the partnership.
Listen, we'll have to go globally, we'll have to spend money all over the world. One of the things that the company would like to do is to actually buy his name.
Foreman agrees for $137.5 million, which gives Sultan the rights to the George Foreman brand as a permanent asset.
At that time, this particular deal was by far the biggest athlete deal with anybody at any time in the history of sport.
I don't think any athlete, Michael Jordan included, has ever gotten a single check or a single agreement that included that type of money.
But George isn't ready to let go entirely. As part of the buyout deal, he agrees to continue endorsing the grill internationally in South Africa, Europe, Australia, Canada, and Asia.
I was going to be that product. I wasn't going to be the guy on that box and another human being when they're not seeing me. So to make certain, I dedicated myself to being a great salesperson 24 hours a day.
With the grill now an international sensation as well, George decides to diversify and start his own line of products.
Once you establish yourself, you got a name, you got a brand, and the stores are accustomed to your products moving. So I'd proven that the George Foreman was a brand that you can sell.
What I feel the Foreman brand represents is integrity, quality, and trust. And so anytime you have a Foreman product in your home or you see a Foreman project, that's what it has.
In 2003, he forges a partnership with Casual Male Clothing to create a line of apparel for plus-size men and boys.
My idea was to get out there and get some nice clothes, affordable for parents, so they can say, I can buy my big teenager who's a football player, basketball player, something that fits him well, he looks nice.
The partnership with Casual Male is an immediate hit. George gets rave reviews from many satisfied customers. But George still sees more opportunities. He also develops a variety of health and fitness products. Foreman claims the Life Shake is a beverage chock full of vitamins and amino acids. His In-Stride shoe provides foot support for diabetics. He also partners with U-Food Restaurant Group to create a chain of healthy fast food restaurants called U-Food Grill.
It's a healthy lifestyle concept, fast casual dining concept. You want a smoothie, you can get that, or broccoli, sweet potato, just a little healthier choice.
Let me introduce my new George Foreman cleaning solutions. They are all natural, so you can keep it green and clean. My George Foreman
But these days, what's closest to his heart is the eco-friendly Let George Clean It line of green home cleaning products.
It's biodegradable and the bottle is recyclable. So many people believe there's something just because it looks real clean and white that it's clean, and the chemicals are destroying us. So let George clean it. My whole hope now is doing something for the environment. I've dedicated myself for the last few years in getting that message over. Get a product that cleans, yet that's safe for your home.
Eager to share his wisdom about more than just products, George is also a prolific writer. He writes 13 books on topics ranging from grilling to a spiritual memoir.
In every book I do, there's almost the light at the end of the tunnel, like, you can do it. And that's the message I try to put in every book. If I can, you can do it.
You don't rush it. You can be able to do like
When Titans returns, George passes the torch and his boxing gloves to his son, Monk.
Come on, movement. I don't need no punches, Monk. Move.
Can George create another generation of Foreman champions?
I give him a little special pointer about the left jab. It's the educated way to be heavyweight champ of the world and to be a millionaire at the sport.
Looking good.
My father always told us that one of the biggest keys to success, not just in business but in life, is that you can't always be the toughest person, the smartest person, the most educated, but you can always be the kindest and nicest person in the world. That's one thing you can do.
When George Foreman isn't on the road promoting his latest products or at a speaking engagement for one of his books, he's at home in Texas spending time with his family and cooking on his grill.
Red, putting your burgers on, son.
They love you when you cook. I said, I don't need to be champ of the world. I got this cooking. And that's why I love cooking, because it makes people love you.
Well, we're going to get all of the junk out of that burger.
George is the proud father of 10 children, 5 boys, all named George, and 5 girls. One of his daughters is even named Georgetta. But Foreman didn't name his kids after himself to stroke his own ego.
My father actually didn't know his biological father until he was my age. And I think he wanted to make sure that would never happen, that we would get to be 26 years old and don't know our real father, our brothers and sisters.
How much are you going to eat of it, Joe?
George discovers the shocking truth about his biological father in 1974, just months after he lost the heavyweight title to Muhammad Ali.
My oldest sister confessed to me and told me, George, you know, you have another dad. And she told me about another man, Leroy Moorhead. He lived in Arkansas, who was my biological dad. It hurt. For a long time, I couldn't believe it. We became good friends, Leroy Moorhead and I, but it was a knockout blow to me, finding out that I had someone else.
Joe, I got that bacon crispy and crunchy for you, man.
According to his sons, the benefits of sharing the same name are many.
Never had to join a fraternity. When everyone is named George Foreman, George Edward Foreman, you feel like you're on a football team or the biggest fraternity there is.
They're going to start digging me up and taking my DNA. They're going to find my secret ingredient. Cheeseburger.
My father was always a big teaser, so there was just... being at home was never boring.
Although George likes to joke around, he takes his role as a father very seriously. He's even written a book about it, a bestseller called Fatherhood by George.
I try to explain to people, children want from you and deserve from their parents more than anything. They need you.
At least one of his sons, George III, otherwise known as Monk, is following in his father's footsteps. He has his professional boxing debut in June 2009.
Boxing was very much in my blood. I had no idea how much I loved it. It totally consumed my life, and it became the thing I thought about 24/7.
Come on. You don't have but a second.
At 6'5" and 240 pounds, Monk is a heavyweight. True to his heritage, he's also knocking out all of his opponents.
I would say our natural tendencies are alike, but when it comes to technique, he's always trying to tell me how to do things better than he did.
Just like that bag, you can throw them hooks.
I see too much of me in my son because he always want to hit you hard. He's going for a knockout. I got to make him practice something other than that. He's got to learn to box too.
Try it. Yeah, you are.
After devoting hours a day to training Monk, George still tends to his own physical fitness. He works out several times a week in his home gym. George isn't chopping wood anymore, but he still remembers the perks.
Snapping. That chopping wood. I was able to land that one right hand in the 10th round, get the knockout of Michael Moore. It was just like a little hatchet now. He didn't see it coming, nor did I.
And when it's time for a little rest and relaxation, George indulges his passion for cars. Over the years, he's collected 60-plus high-end automobiles, everything from Corvette to Lamborghini, Rolls, Tesla, you name it, he's got it. But even the beloved automobiles take a back seat to work. Today, George still possesses the drive to write books and negotiate business deals. And George believes in the Foreman name. George Jr., his eldest son, is vice president of Foreman Enterprises. George IV, also known as Big Wheel, is his executive assistant. George's wife, Mary, conducts quality control. Every product must meet her approval before it goes out the door.
Yep, I'm the boss around here.
Every time we've done a product and there's been a little bit of success is because Mary said, you should do that. I think I consult her too much now because she thinks she's the king.
I have an entire family of George Foreman cleaning solutions.
As for the green cleaning products, Mary gives them an enthusiastic thumbs up. According to George, keeping it all in the family is just good business. The proof is his lucrative empire. But George never forgets why he came out of retirement from boxing. It was for the children. Both he and Monk work with the kids at George's Youth and Community Center in Houston.
There's no more gratifying to get with the kid who's never had a dream come true in his life, and you take him, and he wins a medal, he wins a trophy, and he believes in himself.
Stop them, Mom.
George is living proof that when life knocks you down, you can still get up off the canvas. Eager to inspire others, he continues preaching at the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ in Houston. George's influence reaches beyond the pulpit. Since his retirement from boxing, George makes an astounding $250 million and counting. More than triple what he made as a boxer.
There are not that many people who can talk and talk and talk like George Foreman, and he was just the ultimate pitch man. He was great at it.
He keeps surprising me that how much talent he has. Being a boxer was just a road opening for him to be able to do many, many other things, that he does them all well.
Athletes are not necessarily great businessmen, but George Foreman is one of those few who lights the way for everyone. Boxer, athlete, dare I say, just people trying. Keep trying.
Maybe on my headstone when I pass away, they'll say George Foreman. Nice. Heavyweight champ of the world, that's not important. There are too many of them.